If you're nodding along right now, you're definitely not alone. What you're experiencing isn't a lack of willpower or a character flaw. It's emotional eating, and it's one of the most misunderstood aspects of our relationship with food. Today, we're going to explore the fascinating psychology behind why we eat when we're not physically hungry. And more importantly, I'm going to share practical strategies that can help you break free from these patterns for good. Main content. Let me start by sharing something that might surprise you. Emotional eating isn't actually about food at all. It's about using food as a coping mechanism to deal with uncomfortable emotions, stress, or unmet psychological needs. When we understand this fundamental truth, everything starts to make more sense. Think about it this way. When you were a child and you scraped your knee, what happened? Someone probably gave you a hug, maybe a cookie or a treat to help you feel better. When you had a good day at school, maybe you celebrated with ice cream. From our earliest years, we learn to associate food with comfort, love, celebration, and emotional regulation. This isn't inherently bad, but for many of us, these associations become so strong that food becomes our primary way of managing emotions. The science behind emotional eating triggers is really fascinating. When we're stressed, anxious, or experiencing other difficult emotions, our brain releases cortisol and other stress hormones. These hormones actually increase our cravings for high-calorie, high-sugar, and high-fat foods because our primitive brain thinks we need extra energy to deal with whatever threat we're facing. It's an ancient survival mechanism that doesn't serve us well in our modern world, where the threats we face are usually psychological rather than physical. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Emotional eating often stems from patterns we developed in childhood. Maybe your family used food to show love, or perhaps you learned to associate certain foods with safety and comfort during difficult times. These patterns get stored in what psychologists call our implicit memory, meaning they operate below our conscious awareness. This is why you might find yourself reaching for food without even realizing you're doing it. If you're finding this helpful so far, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss content like this. We're just getting started, and I have so much more valuable information to share with you. Now let's talk about the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger, because this is crucial for breaking the emotional eating cycle. Physical hunger develops gradually. It starts as a gentle reminder that your body needs fuel, and it builds slowly over time. You can satisfy physical hunger with almost any food, and once you've eaten enough, you feel satisfied and can easily stop eating. Emotional hunger, on the other hand, comes on suddenly and urgently. It feels like you need food right now, and it's usually very specific. You don't want just any food. You want that particular comfort food that you associate with feeling better. Emotional hunger also tends to persist even after you're physically full, because the food isn't actually addressing the underlying emotional need. Here's a simple technique you can start using today to help distinguish between these two types of hunger. Before you eat anything, pause and ask yourself these questions. Am I physically hungry? When did I last eat? What am I feeling right now? What happened in the last few hours that might have triggered these feelings? This simple pause can be incredibly powerful because it brings conscious awareness to what's usually an unconscious process. Many people struggle with what I call food addiction psychology, where certain foods trigger intense cravings that feel almost impossible to resist. This isn't about lacking willpower. Research shows that highly processed foods, especially those high in sugar, fat, and salt, can actually trigger similar neural pathways to addictive substances. These foods cause a rapid spike in dopamine, our brain's reward chemical, followed by a crash that leaves us craving more. The food industry has spent billions of dollars engineering foods to be as rewarding and addictive as possible. They call it the bliss point, the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt that makes us want to keep eating. Understanding this can help you feel less guilty about your cravings and more empowered to make different choices. One of the most effective approaches I've seen for addressing emotional eating is what's called trauma-informed eating. This recognizes that our relationship with food is often connected to past experiences, especially from childhood. Maybe you experienced food insecurity and learned to eat whenever food was available. Perhaps you had a parent who used food to show love, or you learned to comfort yourself with food during times of stress or sadness. An inner child food healing approach looks at these early experiences with compassion and understanding. Instead of judging yourself for emotional eating, you can start to see it as a part of you that learned to cope the best way it knew how. When you approach yourself with this kind of compassion, healing becomes possible. Let me share a technique that combines mindful eating with emotional awareness. The next time you feel the urge to eat when you're not physically hungry, try this. Sit down with the food you're craving, but before you take a bite, take 3 deep breaths. Notice what you're feeling in your body. Are your shoulders tense? Is your jaw clenched? Is your stomach in knots? Then ask yourself what emotion you're experiencing. Are you stressed, sad, angry, lonely, bored? Now, eat the food slowly and mindfully. Pay attention to the taste, texture, and temperature. Notice how it makes you feel as you eat it. Does it actually help with the emotion you identified, or does it just provide a temporary distraction? This isn't about restricting yourself or feeling guilty. It's about developing awareness and understanding your patterns. Here's something really important to understand about food as emotional regulation. For many people, especially those who experienced childhood trauma or stress, food becomes a primary way of self-soothing. It's predictable, it's available, and it provides immediate comfort. But the relief is temporary and often followed by feelings of guilt or shame, which can actually trigger more emotional eating. Breaking this cycle requires developing alternative coping strategies. This might include learning breathing techniques for stress, finding ways to process difficult emotions through journaling or talking to someone you trust, or developing other forms of self-care that address your emotional needs more directly. If you're someone who struggles with perfectionism and eating, you might notice that you use food to either reward yourself for being good or to punish yourself for not living up to your impossibly high standards. Perfectionism and emotional eating often go hand in hand because perfectionists tend to have an all-or-nothing mentality. They're either eating perfectly according to their rules, or they're completely off track and might as well eat everything in sight. The antidote to perfectionist eating patterns is developing what I call radical self-compassion. This means treating yourself with the same kindness you would show a good friend who was struggling. It means recognizing that healing your relationship with food is a process, not a destination, and that setbacks are a normal part of that process. Let's talk about some practical stress eating solutions that you can implement starting today. First, create a gap between the trigger and the response. When you feel the urge to eat emotionally, set a timer for 10 minutes and engage in a different activity. You might go for a walk, call a friend, take a shower, or do some deep breathing. Often the urge will pass or at least become more manageable. Second, keep a food and mood journal for a week. Write down not just what you eat, but what you were feeling before you ate it and what triggered those feelings. You might start to notice patterns, like always wanting sweets when you're stressed about work, or craving salty foods when you're feeling lonely. Third, stock your environment with foods that truly nourish you and make the comfort foods less convenient. This isn't about restriction. It's about making the healthier choice the easier choice. When you're emotionally triggered, you're more likely to reach for whatever is most accessible. Building on the concept of food craving control, it's important to understand that trying to white-knuckle your way through cravings rarely works long-term. Instead, we want to work with your body's natural wisdom. This might mean allowing yourself to have the food you're craving, but eating it mindfully and in a way that honors both your emotional needs and your physical well-being. Here's a powerful technique I call the emotional eating recovery framework. When you notice you're about to eat emotionally, follow these steps. First, pause and breathe. Second, identify what you're feeling. Third, ask what you really need right now. Fourth, consider whether food will actually meet that need. Fifth, if you decide to eat, do it with full awareness and self-compassion. This framework isn't about stopping emotional eating completely. Sometimes food really is the comfort we need in the moment, and that's okay. The goal is to make conscious choices rather than automatic responses. Many people find that their emotional eating patterns are connected to specific times of day or situations. Maybe you always want to snack while watching TV in the evening, or you find yourself eating when you're procrastinating on a difficult task. Once you identify these patterns, you can start to address the underlying needs in different ways. For evening eating, you might create a new routine that includes a relaxing activity like reading or taking a bath. For procrastination eating, you might break the difficult task into smaller steps, or use a technique like the Pomodoro method to make it feel more manageable. The journey toward healing your relationship with food isn't always linear. There will be days when you fall back into old patterns, and that's completely normal. What matters is how you respond to those moments. Instead of spiraling into shame and self-criticism, you can use them as opportunities to learn more about yourself and your needs. Remember that food mindset transformation is about so much more than changing what you eat. It's about changing how you think about yourself, your emotions, and your relationship with nourishment. It's about developing the skills to care for yourself in ways that truly meet your needs rather than just providing temporary relief. If you've been struggling with emotional eating for years, please know that change is possible. It might not happen overnight, but with patience, compassion, and the right tools, you can develop a more peaceful relationship with food. You can learn to trust your body's signals, honor your emotions without using food to manage them, and find genuine ways to comfort and care for yourself. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Your emotional eating patterns developed for good reasons. They were your best attempt to cope with difficult situations and emotions. Rather than fighting against these patterns, approach them with curiosity and compassion. Ask what they're trying to tell you about your needs and how you can meet those needs in more effective ways. The path to emotional eating recovery isn't about perfect eating or never using food for comfort again. It's about developing awareness, building better coping skills, and treating yourself with the kindness and understanding you deserve. If this video has been helpful for you, I'd really appreciate it if you'd given a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from this information. And if you're interested in going deeper into this work, check out our other videos on the channel where we explore topics like inner child healing, stress management, and building emotional resilience. Thank you for watching. And remember, healing your relationship with food is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. You deserve to feel at peace with food and with yourself.